Hi, I'm Dawn Bowerman. Welcome. I'm here at Sounds for Life with Dr. Stein again. And today we're going to be talking about what to look for hearing loss. So I want to welcome Dr. Stein. Thank you for having us again.
Thank you.
So last week we talked a little bit about your office and the expectations and your background and how you got into audiology. What I'd like to do today is I've read an article and it talks about people who have hearing loss really aren't ready to accept it right away. And usually there's signs and symptoms that their families see but aren't aware that it could be due to a hearing loss. Could you tell me a little bit about what some families should be looking for or what things might change?
Sure. On average, it takes people 7 years from the time that they're diagnosed with a hearing loss to actually take action and do something about it. So that's the magic number that we work with all the time as audiologists. But generally, if a hearing loss is caused by the aging process, it's a gradual hearing loss, and it's probably noticeable to the family and friends of the person with the hearing loss before they actually notice it. But once the person who has the hearing loss starts to notice it, they start saying things like, people mumble, people don't speak clearly anymore. And so generally the first reaction is that it's the other person's issue, not as a result of the person's hearing loss.
Of their hearing loss themselves.
Right.
So what do they normally then realize it, or how would it be recognizable? Do they have any outward conditions, like do they withdraw from things, or?
That can definitely happen because the person just become so frustrated in the settings that they're in because they know they're not going to be able to communicate that they stop doing the activities that they used to do. They stop, playing bridge with their friends. They stop going to restaurants. They stop going to church or temple, and so that can be one of the signs. Well, for us, once we realize that those kinds of things are happening, that's a real push to say, it's affecting your life. Now you need to go and do something about it. You need to get treatment for it.
So that's pretty definitely noticeable, so a family member would do that. So if they're outward going, let's say going to restaurants, and then they don't want to go anymore. How about, one of the things I always used to notice with my grandparents especially, and again, I know hearing is at any age, but it happened, I remember because I was a kid, my grandfather used to say all the time, "Stop yelling at me." And I know myself, when I hear people talking to people who have hearing loss, they tend to yell at them or talk louder. That's not necessarily how we should talk to a person who's challenged by hearing loss, is it?
No, it really isn't. Basically, speaking louder isn't necessarily going to solve the problem. You need to speak a little bit louder. Too loud is going to be unpleasant for the person with hearing loss. And then just speak a little bit more slowly, and that will help a lot. It's not going to overcome a hearing loss, but those things will help, yes.
Okay, good.
And to get back to, you asked a question, the last question that you asked,
a lot of times what I find is the thing that brings a person in after those 7 years is something painful or embarrassing has happened related to their hearing.
And a lot of times that's the kind of the catalyst that makes somebody take the step and say, "I'm enough. I need to treat my hearing loss."
So what would be an example that you could think of that would be embarrassing? They just didn't.
So if the person is still employed and they're at an important meeting and they missed key information and maybe that affected an account that they had,
that kind of embarrassing.
Sure.
Thing.
I think the part of it is just missing out in life in general, the sounds of birds and things like that. I know recently on the internet I saw a small child that which is different than a hearing aid, a cochlear implant, but she heard for the first time, and the expression on her face, I bet you see that a lot.
Yes, and I don't work with cochlear implants here,
but I have worked with them in the past, and it's very rewarding, and To see people's faces, the parents' faces when
Yeah,
the
yeah.
child recognizes their voice or hears their voice for the first time. It's very rewarding.
Yeah, and I'm sure it's the same even when you get a hearing aid. Hearing different sounds for the first time.
Definitely.
Things like the air conditioner. I remember sitting with a patient once in a audiologist's office, and after that patient got their hearing aids in, they looked and said, "What is that sound?" And none of us had really recognized it, but what it was the air conditioning running, and he hadn't heard it when he came in before.
Right, right.
So now, speaking of sounds, are there different tones that we lose or sounds? I know we do some various tests. What would we lose first? Is there a specific?
Well, typically, if it's an age-related hearing loss, the higher pitches or higher frequencies are the first to go, and then the lower or mid pitches, kind of as time goes by, become affected also.
So like a woman's voice.
Yes, so the higher pitched voices, women, children, grandchildren, and the important thing about that high frequency hearing loss is that the person is actually missing the parts of speech that make speech intelligible. So they're missing the consonant sounds, and they might hear most of what's being said, but they miss plurals. They miss certain key sounds that and that goes back to the embarrassment piece. You heard most of what's said, but you didn't hear everything, and so that sets you up for misinterpretation.
Sure. So there's two things out of there. One, all those gentlemen out there that their wives think they're ignoring them, they probably just aren't hearing them. And the second thing, when you bring that bread home instead of something else, that's probably part of it.
Right.
So again, that's the importance of having your hearing tested on a regular basis, I think. I really appreciate you giving us this information. I look forward next week to getting some more. And talking about some different topics. We did get some feedback last week, and our audience was very excited to be able to ask questions. So once we start those questions coming in, we'll really be able to kind of drill down. Now, the other thing to kind of bounce back is on the testing. And one of the things that I want to do coming up too, is a testing. So I hope we can bring that to the audience as well. So
Definitely.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Stein. Thank you, our guests in the audience, and we look forward to seeing you next week.